Well, today we're going to be talking about places in the Adirondacks
Hmm.
that there was actually a PBS miniseries about. I remember watching it in like the 1990s, I think it was, or maybe it was the early 2000s. Some of these are still exist, and they exist because people really put the effort out to save them. But we're going to be talking about one in particular, and
Right.
what we're going to be talking
Hmm.
about are the Great Camps. So, what springs to mind when you hear the term Great Camps?
Great camps. Oh, like the holiday camps, like
Mm.
in Britain.
These are a little different than that. You remember in Citizen Kane where he decided to take everyone out camping, and
Oh
they had
yeah, right,
similar
exactly.
thing, yeah.
Yeah, things that Henry Ford and
And Hearst would do,
yeah,
yes.
Hearst and
In
and
this cases, it was the Rockefellers and the
right,
the
Edison.
Gettys. Yeah, a lot of big names would do these. So,
Hmm.
so we're going to talk about the Great Camps. Welcome to Unearthly Upstate. This is Mari.
Matthew.
Today we're going to talk about one of the great camps in the Adirondacks, the Sagamore Hotel. You familiar with glamping? The term glamping, Glamping.
No.
Glamping. Okay. That is that's a term used now for people who go camping, but they're going to be camping in this yurt that's fully stocked and solar powered, and there's maybe a spa nearby.
It's as far from roughing it as it can be.
Oh gosh, yeah. But it seems like they advertise it like it's a modern idea. Like you can go,
Right.
you can go stay in these luxury tree houses. There is such a place.
Yes.
That costs $1,000 a night, and you have catered meals, blah blah blah. Oh, it's such a new concept.
People rent out semi-permanent tents,
Yeah,
yurts, small cabins.
they get personal guides. They got
Anemones in there
everything you
too.
need, but it's not modern. Not by a long shot. No. In the Adirondacks, in the later part of the 1800s, the great camps began to develop. They were for rich families from downstate to come up to the mountains and to enjoy nature, but they could not be seen roughing it. So instead, large camps were built to cater to the wealthy. Now,
Yeah, sure.
we were just at a location that wasn't in the Adirondacks, but
Uh-huh.
Mexico Point, good example. That was kind of roughing it, but they were doing it at a hotel. They weren't actually camping. So, yeah. Railroads were laid and hotels were built. The hotels began to compete for the cash of these families. The first great camps were actual camps. Using tents, the families would camp on the land owned by the hotel. Eventually, the hotel changed to a more rustic look to give the experience of camping without losing any of the luxuries, and such as bowling alleys, dance pavilions, and movie theaters.
Oh, there you are.
Now, there are some good examples of these. I guess another time this type of camping came up was in the Catskills in the 50s and 60s. I think even up to the 70s. There was those resorts,
Oh yeah.
that a lot of families from New York would go up to stay for weeks on it. And the same type of thing. You were in the woods, you were roughing it, air quotes, roughing
Air
it,
quotes.
but yet you were still, you had your meals made for
Sure.
you. Anyway, yeah.
One of these great camps was almost lost, but now is open to the public for everyone that wants to experience the luxury of these camps. And like any large hotel, it's haunted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, possibly one of the most haunted in the state, if not in the entire country.
I can hear people arguing that the hotel that the Overlook is based on is probably the most haunted.
Stories of a woman in white that disrupts guests' sleep by coming into their rooms and blowing cold air on them. Oh,
Well, how
that's
rude.
that's not creepy at all. How very Edward. Okay. Ghostly children can be seen playing in the hallways. Also, in the halls, a woman in a blue polka dot dress. That's very specific.
Yeah.
And a couple arguing will appear in the dining room, only to disappear as the fight became physical. And one of the most famous is the little boy that used to collect balls at the golf course, and he was struck by a car supposedly in the 1950s, and he now haunts the golf course. He peeks at golfers from behind bushes and steals golf balls and giggles at the golfers.
So
probably got their stupid pants.
So you see there, it started in the late 1800s, at least went through the 50s. This actually went up to the 1980s, so about 100 years. 100 years of ghosts there.
Wow.
The children play in the hallways. Can't help think of the Overlook. Come play with us, Danny, forever.
I'm coming for you, Darner.
The polka dot dress is interesting because I picture a 1950s style polka dot dress,
Yep.
So that's kind of interesting. And then you have the couple arguing. That's kind of a rare sight with ghost stories.
Yeah, it is.
That sounds so supernatural right there. I mean,
two
the TV show.
Spirits interacting with each other so closely. Yeah, that is odd.
But the little boy that's a tragic one. Really, it is.
Yeah, it is.
I couldn't find any proof that this had actually happened, but the way the story's told, it sounds it's probably did, because his job was to get the golf balls, and while he was getting the golf balls, he got hit by a car. So it's a sad story, but now he likes to bug people on the golf course.
In 1883, the resort was opened, and a group of wealthy investors had bought an island on Lake George to build a grand hotel. And international visitors and the wealthy from all the states made the location an epicenter of society.
Yep.
In 1893 and in 1914, fires broke out in those years and damaged the Grand Hotel, but it was rebuilt in 1921 and held its place as a luxury resort.
So here you go. This place, I think I even heard of the Sagamore in Wisconsin. I mean, that is how famous it was,
It's a name that rings a bell with me as well.
Yeah.
So, throughout the years.
So this is not, just some small little hotel somewhere. And I guess the hotel like the Overlook, it's a good example of what these hotels were like. These large luxury hotels that are out in the wilderness. And you still find it. We have one, I can't think of the name of it, but it's something mountain. It's same thing. You get this long drive up, and then you get to see this huge luxury hotel. You pull up to it, and the Sagamore is there. There's a few up there still in the Adirondacks that still work. And actually, how the Sagamore was saved is pretty interesting. So, you want to continue? Or
yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, well, somewhere along the line, Syracuse University acquired the property in 1975. Announced that they were selling the property. In the New York State Constitution, there is a provision called Forever Wild, and this provision protects the lands of the Adirondacks while allowing people to live and work within the park.
Which is unique.
Provision. It is. If the state bought the camp, it would have to be destroyed. Okay, and the next year, Sagamore was nominated and was added to the National Registry of Historical Places. And in 1980s, the Adirondack Museum began to document the Great Camp. And in 81, the Sagamore closed its doors as a functioning hotel, bringing in guests and all that. And Craig Gilborn, director of the Adirondack Museum, realizing that the landmark may be destroyed, contacted a Paul Mallow at the Syracuse University. And he was representing the Preservation League of New York State. And they were in negotiations to spare the Sagamore buildings. And a change was made to the New York State Constitution to protect not only the Sagamore, but 30 more great camps that were deemed historically significant. And in 1983, the Sagamore began its new life. It was purchased by Norman Wogan of Philadelphia. He had the hotel refurbished to its former glory, and in November 1986, the hotel was nominated to increase the size of its boundaries with the National Register of Historical Places. Today, the hotel is open and is an active place for both the living and the dead as well. Would like to book a stay, check out their website at www.thesagamore.com.
Yep.
All one word.
It's very interesting. A little more background on two things here. We're talking about the Forever Wild provision. Yeah, it's very unique. Many times when, especially like national parks, were set up, it basically remember this way back in Happy Valley. They kicked the people out.
Yeah.
But the Adirondacks is huge. I don't think people realize it's bigger than some of our smaller states. Okay.
It's bigger than Rhode Island.
It's
bigger than Delaware.
It's a huge place.
Bigger than
but
Jersey.
There are hundreds of towns in there. Some of them are quite large. Lake George is quite large. I'm not saying these are, metropolitan areas, but they're large for the area. Okay. So you still had people who were living and working there. You had farmers in there, but they wanted to protect the Adirondacks. So they came up with this thing called Forever Wild. This started actually back in 1873. A surveyor named Verplank Colvin raised the alarm about the depletion of the resources because the loggers were going crazy up there. Well, we've been up through parts of the Adirondacks. You know how good those woods are. Yeah, the loggers were just loving it.
Yeah, there's some big timber out there.
Yep. And so he wanted to get a state forest preserve going that would protect the Adirondacks watershed and the Erie Canal. Now, we've discussed how important the Erie Canal is, or we will be discussing. We've touched upon the Erie Canal.
Yeah, we have. Right? Quite a few times.
Yes.
Touched upon the Erie Canal.
So the park was signed into law in 1892. So, the Sagamore is already going at this point. If I have my timelines correct, I'm just going to double check. Yes, the Sagamore was already there for 9 years. So, all of a sudden they signed this park in. But in 1894, the Forever Wild cause prevented timber cutting, and the sale and lease of any of the state lands in the forest preserve was approved but added to the New York State Constitution. The Adirondack Park and the counties were in it were clearly defined by the early 1900s. Okay. But in 1912, they had to clarify that the park, including the privately owned lands within the park's blue line boundary, became over 6 million acres at this point, led to a unique situation where both private and land and public land would compose the preserve. And like I said, there's the difference. We talked about how Happy Valley, how they kicked everybody out and that became state land. There were still people living there up until much later, but it was pretty much owned by the state at that point. Here, they didn't kick anyone out. Well, you had 6 million acres. Where were you going to put these people? People that lived there for a while. And they had towns established. And it wasn't a simple thing as closing down one small village. I mean, just think of all the...
And being that this was the 1980s, people, since places like Happy Valley, had time to think about
the Happy Valley happened after. But you see, that was pretty common. This is very unique. I don't know of any other...
When did Happy Valley happen again?
1930s. It happened during the Works program.
Right, exactly.
So this happened after they did the Adirondack provision.
Okay.
So this is why it's very unique. Now, the interesting part, people think, the Adirondacks, they can't be that big. You can stick Yellowstone, the Everglades, Glacier, and the Grand Canyon National Parks inside the Adirondacks. That is how big the Adirondack Park is. So you can see why they wanted to protect that area. I mean, it's huge. But at the same token, you already had great camps up there. You had very established towns up there. You did have, they cut back on the lumbering, but there was still mining going on. One of the ghost towns we may touch upon was a mining town at one point. Well, they did more smelting there than mining, but
going back here, what year was it? Was the Sagamore and the surrounding area set aside?
It was opened in 1883, I believe. 1883. No, 1883 it was opened.
When was it set aside as a park?
When it was set aside as protection?
Yeah.
Somewhere in the early 1980s.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
That this was this was done after Happy Valley happened.
Right. I was talking about the Forever Wild was set up prior to that.
Prior to
But
Happy
it was
Valley.
the Forever Wild provision that protected.
Okay.
Well, back up. The Forever Wild provision would have destroyed the Great Camp.
Uh-huh.
Because once the state buys the land in there, they try to put it back to its natural state. There's this historic spot. So
exactly.
There were other camps that had to survive too. Now the term Great Camp didn't come into use until 1916. But it wasn't really used until people trying to save these from being destroyed. To go along with the protection of Sagamore, we mentioned 30 other camps that were also saved. But here are a few of them right here. Camp Eagle Island, Camp Pine Knot, Camp Top Ridge, Camp Uncas, UNCAS, Camp Ucas, Camp Wild Air, Echo Camp, Moss Ledge, Prospects Point, the Sagamore Lodge, Sagamore. Yeah, so these were saved. Is there a lot of history with these camps? Oh, you better believe it. When we cover President McKinley's assassination attempt, there's going to be a tie-in to a few of these areas in the Adirondacks. Not a particular great camp in it, but there's a reason why a certain person was up there at the time.
Right.
But a lot of these you can see. A lot of the ones that were rescued you can visit. If they're not open to the public for you to use, like the Sagamore, you could actually stay there. Some of them do allow you to come and do tours upon them to see what these were like. And like I said, these were immense things. Now, the Adirondacks is also known for one other thing that we will be covering a little later in this season. Kind of related to the Great Camps, was going on at the same time. The tuberculosis cabins.
Oh, man. My goodness sakes, yes.
There were entire towns where that was their business. So you had the wealthy coming up there to come and enjoy nature without giving up their luxuries. And then you had people who were suffering tuberculosis who were going up there trying to get help, trying to be cured.
Yeah.
And some very famous people ended up there. So I am so glad they were able to find a way to protect this history because, yes, the Forever Wild provision would have destroyed it. I mean, if the state would have came in at that point, they would have destroyed it because Forever Wild provision wanted to protect the lands first, which is understandable. You don't want them to be abused. You get 6 million acres of mountains and forests and waterways and valleys, and I mean, it's just a wide variety of landscapes up there. It's not just the mountains. And so that understandably, that's why the Forever Wild provision was put in. At the same token, it's destroying some of the history. There is some conflict going on right now with people do want to do some infrastructure up there, and it takes so long for them to get it approved by the state because of the Forever Wild provision. I mean, just rebuilding a bridge, you still have here, outside of the Adirondack Park, you still have to do an environmental study. You still have to do, surveys and everything before you fix the bridge. Now add on to it, well, is fixing the bridge really going to be worth it? That's a lot of the problems I'm running into up there. So
we've got a couple of bridges just locally there that have been closed, and it's created a hazard to navigation, and people are having to drive halfway across the county just to get to a single destination.
That happened to us yesterday.
That did happen to us yesterday, and they get closed indefinitely because of, I don't know if it's money or if it's like these environmental studies that are going on.
Well, it depends. I mean, in Adirondacks, it could be because of the Forever Wild. There are so much more stipulations with that.
But these other bridges, they're not in a protected area.
Right.
They're on state and local highways that they're, to be used. And they've got to be repaired. They just can't sit there.
So what's your opinion, Ori,
Yeah.
The Adirondacks are really interesting. We've really visited the southwestern part. We went up to, what was the name of that reservoir up there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can't remember. But it's a reservoir that feeds the water to Utica. I cannot remember. But beautiful. I mean, that is part of the Adirondacks.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to go up a little further. Definitely Lake George is on
Isn't it
my
also
list.
considered the northernmost part of the Appalachians?
I've read
Or is
two
that the
different things.
Catskills?
Read two different things. Catskills I know are part of the Appalachians.
Yeah.
There's some argument that the Adirondacks should be.
Yeah.
It depends on what you're reading. It's kind of interesting
Could easily be.
how they determine where these mountain ranges sit. The Catskills are one we really haven't visited yet. I really would like to.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
I shouldn't say we haven't visited. I did have a job interview and it was in the Catskills, so maybe we were there for a little bit.
So we've been.
But we've been. But yeah, it's very, very, and you gotta remember, go talk about history of there. Wow, Lake Placid, 2 Olympics out there.
Yeah.
The Adirondacks border Lake Champlain. Look, there's Champ. There's Champ, and then you got Plattsburgh. There's a lot of history there in Plattsburgh. So it's 6 million acres, but it's not just land. It's not just out there, and there is a lot of places to explore. I don't know if I'll ever do this, but there's that thing where if you can get all the mountain peaks, hike up all the mountain peaks.
Yeah.
You get a 4-year-old girl just did it, so it gives me hope. But
just hiked up there.
She did all 30 peaks, and there's one where you hit all the fire towers too. You can get a badge for doing that as well.
Right.
Yeah. So
you level up.
Yeah, level up basically.
Get badges.
But the Sagamore is a nice view of a certain time in our history where that was what people did. The luxury class did.
Yeah.
They would spend months roughing it in a camp that had a bowling alley and a movie theater.
Yeah, exactly.
And you could still find those type of camps up there.
And nowadays they probably have a casino attached to it.
Sure, yeah.
Thing. And sure.
Yeah, you probably would. Although there's still plenty of great camps up there. In the Department of Environmental Conservation, I just brought up their website. This is their facts on it. Of the 4.8 million acres of land managed by the DEC Division of Land and Forest, nearly 3 million of the acres, or 61%, are classified as forest preserve, comprising of this over 2.6 million acres in the Adirondack Preserve. Okay, so 2.6 million acres is owned by the state. 2.4 is privately owned.
Wow.
But it's all protected within the park. New York's forest preserve lands have exceptional scenic, recreational, and ecological value, rugged mountain peaks, remote lakes, ponds, millions of acres of unfragmented forest, and nearly 2,000 miles of trails provide ample opportunity for many types of recreation, while providing habitats for plants and wildlife. So basically, they're trying to strike a balance now with that forever wild. They're like, you still want to go out and enjoy it, you still want to be out in the wild, but you need to stop at McDonald's after you're done hiking. So they're trying hard. Maybe not McDonald's. There's plenty of great restaurants up there. You don't have to go to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Like you can go to Plattsburgh, get a Red Hot, or get a Michigan when you go to Plattsburgh. That's my goal. If we ever get to Plattsburgh, I'm having a Michigan.
What's that?
It's a hot dog.
Okay, well, what goes on? What makes a Michigan hot dog a Michigan hot dog?
Let me pause it. Okay, Michigan hot dog is a steamed hot dog on a steamed bun topped with a meaty sauce, referred to as Michigan sauce, and it's usually tomato paste and usually served with onions. It looks like a mess. It's
Well, I see it.
Yeah, it's like a chili dog.
It does look like a chili dog.
But
it's like I'd have to go out after it with a knife and fork.
I fall in love with what they call the Red Hots, which is kind of a variation of this. And the same thing, it's a hot dog with a bun, but that's not a steamed bun. I noticed that, or at least where I had it wasn't a steamed bun. Michigan hot dogs are never referred by the name in Michigan itself. So It's only up in Plattsburgh they're referred to as Michigan. And well, also in Quebec too. They're also referred to as Michigan dogs. So we could do an entire episode just on the different types of hot dogs served up in upstate New York. Have nothing to do with paranormal, but we'll talk about the food. Which is kind of ironic considering I can't eat as much
Texas and the Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chicago's right out of Chicago. I'm just talking about the ones here in New York State,
Right.
Yeah, so...
Don't ever make the mistake of being seen putting ketchup on your hot dog in Chicago, I guess.
Oh, God, no. And you have to have pickles on it, too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we started talking about the Great Camp Sagamore and ended up talking about hot dogs. I think that means we're hungry. We should probably call this a day.
Yeah, probably have a snack.
All right. So thank you for staying with us.
Yes, thank you for listening to our Ghastly podcast.
And again, like, share, do whatever you can to promote for us, please.
Yes.
Stop by Patreon, stop by YouTube.
If you like it, share it. Even if you hate it.
Even if you hate it. Tell people how much you hate this podcast.
Yes, please.
All right. Talk to you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Unearthly Upstate. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, and on our webpage. We are also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, Google Podcasts, and CastBox. Please like, share, and review on your favorite platform. Unearthly Upstate is an Animator Liar production. The show is produced by Mari and Matt Manette, with purring provided by Honey and Lloyd. Research and writing by Mari Manette. Music is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Unless otherwise stated in the episode, the places mentioned in the broadcast are not paid or contact us for any type of promotion. Please check out our webpage for credit and sources for the episode. Thank you.